Okay, and next up we have Michael Zeiler. Many of you will have seen his fabulous maps that he produces. He's also done a lot of work on predicting visitation, and so today he's going to tell us about prediction versus reality, and I'm really excited to see what this says.
Okay, it should be running.
Has it started?
Yep.
Great. Good afternoon. Most of you have seen watershed maps delineating the Mississippi Basin versus other basins. This map here is kind of like that, except it's what I call a drive shed map. And this is the basis of my method, is that I make the assumption that people drive the shortest path to the path, and that if they're closer, they're more likely to go visit. So that's the basic idea behind the predictions that I made. And to put that in numbers, I decided for somebody living 200 miles from the center line of the eclipse, there's a likelihood of between 0.5% and 2% that they'll actually go visit the eclipse. So it's a proximity-based model, and that diminishes as you go further away. And then to recap, this is this is actually fairly precisely the number of people who live inside the path without traveling. That's over 31 million people. Now, what actually happened on Eclipse Day, this is a composite of some of the satellite imagery. As other people have noted, there was kind of an inverse weather versus meteorological map, because some of the worst areas projected were clear and vice versa. In Texas, we had a very mixed story. Cloudy in the first half of the path, including me. I got clouded out for the first time in 12 eclipses. But clear in Dallas and beyond. I couldn't really find very good statistics for Texas, but for Arkansas, what skewed things in Arkansas was that the Department of Health predicted 1.5 million visitors. I don't know where that came from. That wasn't realistic. But that's why you have the difference between those two headlines. One says it was a big success, and the other says it was a disappointment. Missouri had clear weather, very high visitation numbers. Missouri is the first of 5 states that I think exceeded my predictions. Illinois had a great success in Carbondale, where they were dancing with the clouds in 2017. This time they had a clear and wonderful view. I couldn't find hard numbers for Illinois, but I got reports of long traffic jams in the area. In Indiana, 50,000 people alone were in the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. That must have been a great party. I haven't seen any statewide reports for Indiana, but 100,000 in Bloomington is a big number. Ohio, 150,000 people came to state parks, 200,000 visitors in greater Cleveland. So Ohio also was a big success on Eclipse Day. Pennsylvania, the northwest corner of Pennsylvania, the area along the lake and around Erie, the city of Erie, was eclipse central in Pennsylvania. Cloudy in the morning, but sunny in the afternoon. Good crowds, but I couldn't get much documentation for numbers. New York, the governor of New York actually released press release a few days after the eclipse with their estimate of visitation, so that was very kind of them. It's a little hard to parse their numbers, but they leave the impression that at least 500,000 people came to New York for the eclipse, which was beyond my estimates. Vermont was also significantly beyond my estimates with 160,000 visitors. That was no doubt attributable to the fine weather that day for those states. New Hampshire, I have a very tiny prediction for New Hampshire because for other places, they would more likely end up in a different state. But it turns out that a huge number came through New Hampshire, but I think that a lot of that was through traffic instead of destination traffic. Maine was another big win for the Eclipse, way beyond my estimates, more than double my high estimate for Visitation, also because of the uncharacteristically clear weather. So in conclusion, we see two maps here, the weather map, of course, and then the second map is an interesting map. It's a map of the percent of occupancy in Airbnbs throughout the nation. So that orange band is very clear. So the first conclusion is obviously weather was a major impact on Eclipse visitation and traffic. It was a pretty consistent pattern. If an area was cloudy, they didn't really have the traffic jams. But if it was sunny, we heard from somebody yesterday that there was a 13-hour traffic jam, I believe, in Vermont. The region that was a big winner was New England. Also, Missouri and Ohio did very well in terms of visitation. And something another pattern that I noticed was that in several states, there were local predictions that I felt were way too high and unrealistic. And so they skewed some of the press reports afterwards saying, the massive numbers didn't come, so local vendors were disappointed. But I think overall, the numbers were pretty solid. So it's too early for accurate estimates. I've seen very few statewide reports, but I think on the preponderance of the evidence, my estimate of 4 million visitors was likely exceeded. Thank you.
Questions for Michael? I assume this is Laurie asking a question.
So, Michael, for New England, did you do any estimates based on what Canadian travel would be down to the United States? Did you include that in your estimates?
No, I didn't.
Do you think that may be the reason why you may have underestimated? Okay.
Okay, I consciously didn't include international travel because I made the judgment that it would be a very small percent. Because it's a bit of a hassle to cross the international border if you can find a suitable viewing location in your own country.
Well, true, but for Vermont, it's an easy, the access from Canada isn't too difficult. And I would think, and so those are the things that may have not been, I don't know what kind of data the province has collected. Of course, Montreal was the key point up there, but that may be one reason why your numbers you may have not included, and I don't know how the provinces will be collected.
Yeah,
but.
well, I should also say one other thing is that my model is very simple intentionally, so it's not designed to capture nuances like that. It's more of a probabilistic averaging method. Hi.
Hi. First of all, thank you for your maps. They're very helpful.
You're welcome.
Lots of people love them. I use them. Okay. Is this better? Yeah. Okay. I wanted to ask, I'm from Texas, and we were disappointed, but I think looking back, we had some mayors in Texas, put out press releases. I looked it up just now. I think it was February was the first one that I found. So this is mid-February. that they declared a state of disaster, okay, to get federal funding, I guess, which caused, in my assessment, people to fear going to the path. It was this big controversy. And so I would just, like to, as a, I guess, Eclipse chaser, I'm not an expert in any of this, I would just suggest, maybe try to, next time when we're either gone or the next generation, be a little bit more cautious when talking about to city and local, like county and government, especially when we have planners coming in from the national task force, which I think is awesome and amazing. It was hard for me to even get some communities to trust national planners, because there's so much going on that sometimes it's hard for people to trust someone on Zoom. They want to, they want someone to sit down, and especially the Hispanic culture, we want to, have a cup of coffee, face-to-face dialogue. And so it's just, I think sometimes we just have to be very cautious. Otherwise, we end up not having the crowds that maybe would have come. That's just my take.
It's a difficult thing to model because there's so many variables.
I have another question.
All right.
If we have time.
Yep.
So especially with all the weather changes and all that, I remember hearing, I've still this week heard stories of people who missed a 2017 eclipse because they were trying to move and didn't get there. The traffic was so bad. Did that happen at all with the weather migration, or just back roads that got too congested? Any reports of that?
I don't know, but the typical pattern for traffic is that traffic going into the eclipse path in the morning generally isn't too bad because people distribute their arrival through a period of several hours. But what happens is, as the moment the total solar eclipse ends, people get in their cars to return back home, and then you have instant traffic jam on many highways in the path. That certainly happened in the states like Vermont. Major traffic jams. We heard yesterday 13 hours was one delay.
Okay, and the other thing I'll say from a Ohio perspective, there's definitely the way things were in the media, and some of the agencies were telling locals to stay home. Let all the outsiders come. The national park says, please don't come to the national park. Let everybody who doesn't live around here come, which I thought was atrocious, but that was kind of interesting too, which kept the locals off the road. So, all right,
That's
thank you.
too bad.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.